He threw $200 at my feet and said, "You're no longer a Harrison." I left that mansion with a suitcase, a degree no one respected, and just enough money for a one-way bus ticket. He laughed, said I'd be nothing without the family name. 10 years later, I walked back through those same doors, as the CEO of the company, trying to buy his. They disowned me for being different. So I built something better. And that $200, it became the most poetic revenge I could have ever imagined. Here's how it all happened. I had just graduated from college at the age of 22 with a degree in engineering. Not even my parents had bothered to come to the ceremony. I watched the money fly like fallen leaves to the marble floor as I stood in our large living room with my one suitcase filled with everything I owned. The wealth of the Harrison family was all around us. Magnificent artwork, ancient furniture, and crystal chandeliers all screamed old money, and even older pride. Each son followed his father into the hallowed halls of Harrison and Sons Investment Group, where we had been investment bankers for decades. Right up until me. Engineering. When I announced my major, my father and I got into a fight. Mechanics are exalted by engineers. I will not let any of my sons waste their lives tinkering with machines. However, I noticed something that they didn't. I realized that technology was the way of the future while they were counting their millions in conventional investments. The next big fortunes would be created in garages and labs by individuals who knew how to combine opportunity and creativity, not in offices with mahogany panels. It was barely midday as my mother stood by the grand staircase, sipping a martini. She added, "Ethan, you still have time to make this right. Return to the company. With the board, your father can resolve the conflict." I truly looked at her, saw the rehearsed smile that had never quite made it to her eyes. As a child, I had seen Mom gauge her value by the size of her diamond rings, each one getting bigger than the one before, as though she was attempting to fill an ever-widening emptiness. "No, Mom, I've given up trying to be what you desire." The hazardous hue of red that I had grown up fearing appeared on my father's face. "Then leave. You're not a Harrison anymore. You're squandering the trust fund, the relationships, and the legacy for a stupid idea." I stooped to retrieve the $200 notes. They were fresh and crunchy. Most likely, his assistant had gotten them from the bank, just for this harsh theatrical moment. I said, "Retain the trust fund." "I'll build something of my own," I responded, tucking the money into my wallet. The sound of my father's laughter reverberated across the lofty ceilings. "You, construct something." He pointed to my basic button-down shirt and slacks, which contrasted sharply with his custom-tailored suit, and said, "You can hardly dress yourself properly. You are nothing without the Harrison name." For years to come, those words would reverberate in my head, propelling me through innumerable restless nights and impossibly difficult situations. However, I simply grinned at that moment. Observe me. With a suitcase, $200, and an engineering degree they deemed useless, I left that mansion. With one last dramatic clang, the massive iron gates of my childhood house closed behind me. I discovered I had no car as I was standing on the sidewalk since it was registered in my father's name. There was nowhere to live. The trust fund had covered the cost of the flat close to the institution, and I have precisely $200. However, I had a vision for the future and the abilities to create it, which they didn't comprehend. I spent $15 on a burger and fries after walking to the bus stop and purchasing a $60 ticket to Silicon Valley. As I watched buses arrive and depart from that oily cafe, I took out my notebook and made 3 self-promises. I would never take advantage of the Harrison name. I would construct a world-altering project. It would be on my terms when I got back. There was only $125 left, hardly enough to eat for a few days, and not enough to rent a place. But I had my degree, my laptop, and, above all, a concept that had been growing inside of me while my time in college. Although the world was rapidly shifting to renewable energy, storage remained a crucial issue that no one had been able to resolve. Batteries were still costly and inefficient, but solar and wind power were getting cheaper. I had created a theoretical blueprint for a brand new energy storage technology that had the potential to completely transform the market. The issue: it would take years of research, millions of dollars in funding, and resources that I lacked to build. The concept was deemed clever but unfeasible by my instructors. My dad had described it as diluted. I referred to it as my future. I watched as my hometown vanished into the night as my bus left the station. I had tried to be the son they want for 22 years. It was time for me to grow into the guy I was supposed to be. I had no idea that this $200 adventure was the start of a tale that would completely change the energy sector. In 10 years, I would create a billion-dollar business, transform the way energy is stored and used globally, and come home, not as the prodigal son, but as someone they never thought I could be. I had to make it through Silicon Valley on $125, and a dream that would not die, though. Silicon Valley was not what I had envisioned as a shining tech paradise. I slept on a bench in a Palo Alto park on my first night, using my jacket as a cover and my laptop bag as a cushion. After purchasing a bagel and a cup of coffee at a nearby cafe, my $125 had dropped to $30 by morning. But everything changed because of that cafe. As I tried to use their Wi-Fi to extend my coffee for hours, the barista replied, "You're going to get robbed sleeping out there." Maya was her name. Instead of throwing me out, she made me an offer. I could sleep in the storage room after hours if I helped fix their espresso machine, which keeps breaking. It took me 20 minutes to fix their machine. I was offered a part-time position doing maintenance because the owner was so impressed. I suddenly had money and a place to sleep, even if it was only a room filled with paper cups and coffee beans. I worked at the cafe during the day. I spent the evenings honing my energy storage concepts while researching patents and technological developments over the cafe's Wi-Fi. Maya would occasionally bring me leftover pastries, look at my intricate schematics, and pose questions that truly made me think more clearly. In other words, you're creating a better battery. One evening, she inquired. I showed her my sketches and stated, "Not exactly. The energy wasted by traditional batteries during storage and transit is excessive. A novel kind of molecular structure used in my design has the potential to store energy with about 100% efficiency." She gazed at the schematics. "And why isn't this being done by anybody else?" I smiled and said, "Because it's theoretically impossible. However, I believe I have found a way." I saved enough money from working at a cafe for 3 months to rent a small room in a house with 5 other IT dreamers. It had a desk where I could work, but that was about it. I also began working as a technical consultant on a freelance basis, assisting local companies with their engineering challenges. I met Nathan Chen in this way. He commented, "Your solution saved us months of work for our power management issue," following my assistance in resolving a crucial hardware issue for his startup. "Are you working on anything else?" After hesitating, I chose to take a chance. I showed him my plans for energy storage. David stared at my comprehensive technical specs for a long time without saying anything. He looked up at last. "This has the potential to alter everything. However, building a prototype will require a significant amount of money." I know. I kept my family's money and the trust fund I had abandoned from him a secret. "I'm tackling it." David turned out to be more than just a customer. He introduced me to Stanford's top molecular engineering researcher, Dr. Elise Tan. She questioned me about my designs for 6 hours, looking for holes in my beliefs. "It's ambitious," she remarked at last. "It might not be feasible. However, if it succeeds—" She hesitated. Dr. Wong stated, "I have some contacts at Berkeley's Energy Research Center. Are you considering utilizing their laboratory facilities?" Would I want to use one of the best research facilities in the world? Indeed, I kept my composure. I would. Over the course of the following year, I worked 4 jobs: mornings at the cafe, afternoons as a freelance consultant, evenings conducting research at Berkeley's labs, and late nights honing my designs. I survived on willpower and energy drinks. Then the discovery was made. It took place at 3 a.m. at the lab at Berkeley. For weeks, I had been experimenting with various chemical configurations in an attempt to identify the ideal structure for energy storage. I looked at the test results 3 times after they were returned because I was so shocked by what I saw. It was successful. The energy storage efficiency of the prototype was 97.9%. Almost flawless energy transfer, which was long regarded as unattainable by the scientific world. Dr. Wang herself confirmed the findings. This is more than just a breakthrough, she added, gazing at the data. It's revolutionary. I met with 3 large venture capital firms in less than a week. David assisted me in getting my pitch ready. Every night, Maya would come over and help me practice by asking me challenging questions until I had perfected my responses. The same thing was said by the first 2 venture capital firms. Wonderful, but too dangerous. It was different at the 3rd meeting. Your technology has the potential to transform the storage of renewable energy, stated Leo Marquez, Quantum Ventures' senior partner. But why should we put our faith in an unknown 23-year-old? I looked him in the eyes because I've been demonstrating that seemingly impossible things are achievable for the past year. Give me another chance to prove it. For a 25% share in my business, which I called Nova Energy Systems, they contributed $5 million. A new star rising from nothing was a private joke. We hired a small group of talented engineers, relocated the research to our own facility, and put in more effort than ever before. We encountered innumerable technical difficulties, a great deal of failure, and times when it seemed like everything would collapse. However, we succeeded 2 years later. We were prepared to test our first energy storage system on a commercial basis. Even our highest expectations were surpassed when the results were received. With an efficiency of 98.8%, our system could store and deliver energy almost 3 times more efficiently than the greatest available technology. Interest in the energy sector exploded. Suddenly, solar and wind power were not only feasible, but also more cost-effective than fossil fuels. Our technology was desired by all of the major power companies. 3 years after that initial venture capital investment, Nova Energy Systems became public. The first day, the stock price doubled. My investment in the business was worth more than $200 million by the end of the week. After moving away from home, I purchased my first suit. The outfit came from a boutique that caters to tech executives rather than the pricey tailor my father employed. I chose it with the assistance of Maya, who is now our head of operations. Are you going to brag in front of someone? She smiled knowingly as she asked. I adjusted the well-fitting jacket and responded, no. However, I believe it's time to visit home. It had been 5 years since I last spoke to my family. I was aware of Harrison and Sons Investment Group's difficulties through social media and business news. Due to market shifts and financial technology, traditional investment banking was dying. They have to invest in new technologies and adjust. That's exactly what I attempted to explain to them years ago. Their largest problem to date was a hostile takeover attempt by an unidentified investment firm with a tech concentration. They were unaware that Digital Horizon Capital, the company, was a division of Nova Energy Systems. My business. I purchased a ticket home. The $200 I had left was a small portion of my current net worth, which is in the hundreds of millions. However, I had no intention of returning to make amends or to boast. I was returning to purchase the business that had once deemed me unworthy. Before I departed, Maya noticed me gazing at an old family photo. Are you certain of this? She inquired. I put the picture aside. They taught me that the only way to gauge one's value was through money. It's time to prove my value to them. I had no idea at the time how deeply the Harrison family would be shaken by my homecoming, that my retaliation would be more intricate and sweeter than I had anticipated, and that they would lose everything because of the $200 lesson they gave me. I was going to find out, though. The headquarters of Harrison and Sons Investment Group remained unchanged. The The same massive limestone structure, the same lettering in gold, the same old money haughtiness. This time, however, I entered through the front doors as the CEO of the business attempting to buy them, not as the disappointing son. Mr. Using the name I had taken after leaving, I said to the receptionist, Blake, I'm here to see the board. Unaware of the prodigal son coming home, she led me to the top floor. With its dark wood paneling, oil portraits of previous chairmen, and the family crest carved above the fireplace, the Harrison boardroom was just as I had remembered. When I was little, I used to play beneath that table and watch my father make deals and sabotage rival businesses. I was now waiting at the head of the table, board members, executives, and then my father came in one by one. He was older than 5 years should have permitted, and stress and deteriorating luck had lessened his once dominant presence. When he first took his seat, his gaze slid past me without realizing who I was. I said, Gentlemen, I'm here, representing Digital Horizon Capital regarding our offer to acquire Harrison and Sons. With his head turned away from me, my father yelled, We don't want to be bought out by some tech startup. Harrison and Sons has been around for 150 years. I interrupted, letting my natural voice take the place of the deliberately neutral tone I had been using, and will collapse within 5 if you don't adapt. Father, isn't that correct? Deathly silence fell in the room. When my father's recognition finally set in, his face turned from red to white. Ethan. Hi, Dad. Do you miss me? Old Mr. Whitmore, a board member who had known me since I was a child, frowned and let out a gasp. Ethan Vale, little. I told him, it's Ethan Blake now, actually. And I'm here to talk about this company's future. My father became enraged after being shocked. This is a trick of some sort. Are you employed at Digital Horizon? I grinned. No, Dad. Digital Horizon is mine. It belongs to Nova Energy Systems as a subsidiary. I kept a close eye on the board members and liked how their faces changed as the link was made. Yes, Nova Energy Systems, the business that is transforming energy storage technology globally. It's impossible, my dad muttered. You took nothing with you. No, I muttered. I took $200 with me. Your final lesson on the importance of money. Do you want to know what was purchased in that lesson? I gave my assistant a nod, and she started giving each board member a folder. The current valuation of Nova Energy Systems is $4.20 billion. Our investment arm is called Digital Horizon Capital, which you apparently neglected to thoroughly research. We have been covertly purchasing Harrison and Sons stock through a number of subsidiaries and shell companies for the past year. I looked up and opened my own folder. We currently hold 51% of your shares as of this morning. Additionally, we are the primary owners of your company's debt, which is significant given your recent troubles. When my father saw the full extent of what I had done, the blood left his face. The son he had cast aside had come back to steal everything. It's a straightforward offer, I added. Digital Horizon will acquire Harrison and Sons. The family will no longer use the name. We're going to dissolve the board. I stopped and met his eyes. And you'll resign. With instant effect. This is impossible, he answered raspily. The legacy of the family, he stammered. The family legacy is fading, I interrupted. Your investing methods are out of date. Your technology is outdated. Additionally, your conceit has made you oblivious to how the world is changing. 5 years ago, I attempted to tell you this, but you were too arrogant to pay attention. Clearing his throat, Mr. Whitmore said, Surely, Ethan, we can talk about this. Still, you're a Harrison. No, I firmly answered. The day I decided to create something new rather than hold on to the old, you all made it abundantly evident that I was no longer a Harrison. I'm not here to make amends. I have business here. I got up and straightened my suit, which was custom-made and cost 1,000 times as much as the first $200. You can accept the offer within 24 hours. Digital Horizon will promptly call in all outstanding debts if you decline. Sons and Harrison won't make it through the week. My dad was able to speak once more. You would ruin the business owned by your own family. Everything we constructed. No, Dad. Because of your unyielding resistance to change, you ruined it. I'm giving you an opportunity to preserve what's left, including the employment, the clients, and the heritage you say you care about so much. I went to the door, stopped, and turned around. Oh, and Father, do you recall that the only way to gauge a man's value was by his money? I gave a chilly smile. On your own terms. Now, how much am I worth? Press queries and legal sessions filled the next 24 hours. The stock of Harrison and Sons plunged after news broke of Nova Energy Systems' takeover. Naturally, my father sought to organize support and call in old favors in an attempt to fight. However, I had foreseen everything. All paths of escape were closed. We already have the support of every possible white knight. All financial lifelines were cut off. I now held the empire he had devoted his life to defending. The following day, in the same room where he had dumped $200 at my feet, they signed the documents. My father came up to me as the lawyers were settling the formalities. He appeared elderly, beaten. However, there was another look in his eyes, one that could have been one of respect, or simply give up. You orchestrated this, he muttered. Everything. No, Dad. The moment you decided my dreams weren't worthy of being respected was something you planned. I simply created something that surpasses your expectations. Slowly he nodded. And now, are you going to ruin everything? For retaliation? I stared at him for a while. No, I intend to reconstruct it into something that is truly significant. Harrison and Sons will join an organization that is working to address the global energy dilemma, not merely transferring funds across accounts. I turned to go, the reality that it's not yours anymore. I spoke behind my back. That is merely poetic. He yelled one final time as I turned to go. That $200, Ethan. I grinned. Papa, that was the best investment I ever made. I learned exactly what I didn't want to become from it. 6 months passed throughout the transition. I totally reorganized the business, upgrading its processes and refocusing its funds on investments in sustainable energy. The majority of the workers retained their positions. This wasn't about punishing them for my father's transgressions, after all. With his pride more damaged than his finances, my father retired to our former family home. I made sure he had enough money saved up for a comfortable lifestyle. My mother made multiple attempts to get in touch, always hinting at a reconciliation. But I stayed out of the way. After burning, certain bridges ought to remain ashes. A year later, I stood gazing out over Silicon Valley from my office at the headquarters of Nova Energy Systems. My father had brought in a small package, which Maya carried in. It contained $200 in crisp bills, just like the ones he threw at me 5 years prior. After the takeover signing, I had left them on his desk. A note that said, "You were worth more than I knew," was among them. I brought the bills back to the cafe where I had begun my adventure. At my firm, the barista who had earlier provided me with sanctuary was now a senior executive. However, the cafe continued to serve Palo Alto's best coffee. I left a tip of $200. Using my success to take over my father's business could be viewed as petty by some. However, I wasn't motivated by retaliation. I took this action because sometimes tearing down a damaged heritage and replacing it with something better is the only way to mend it. Money can't buy happiness, so the saying goes. However, $200, I learned something much more important from it. A person's family name or bank account don't reflect their genuine value. It lies in what people decide to construct using their available resources. I created an empire in spite of the Harrison name, not because of it. With the $200 I had left over, I was able to purchase something invaluable: the ability to be who I was destined to be. The millions I brought back, they simply demonstrated that I was correct all along, and that is more valuable than any family wealth. And that's how, with purpose rather than retaliation, I transformed a $200 heartache into a $1 billion rebirth. The finest retaliation is sometimes quiet rather than loud. It's getting better. You're creating something so strong that you don't require their consent anymore. Establish limits if you're clinging to hurt or betrayal. Concentrate on becoming the person you were destined to be. For you, not for them, let go. Has anybody you trusted or loved ever deceived you? Leave a comment with your tale. Together, let's make room for development, fortitude, and recovery.